Hello everyone, welcome to Unit 3, Literature Review. First, let's look at some terms that you will see in today's lesson. You can use dictionary if you want. The first one, literature review. Second, referencing. Last one, in-text citation. Now, I will provide the Vietnamese meaning for you. Literature review means tổng quan lý thuyết. Referencing meaning trích dẫn nằm ở cuối bài. In-text citation, trích dẫn nằm ở trong bài. So based on the warm-up activities, I think that you understand a bit about what we will learn today. So for today's lesson, you can evaluate related literatures of the research topic. You can also summarize and synthesize relevant sources to establish the literature review, and also apply the knowledge and skill to avoid plagiarisms when composing literature review. I divide the lesson into two main parts. The first one, we look at the literature review, how can we do it, and then referencing. So for the literature review, I divide it into three main parts. First one, I give you the definitions of literature and function of literature, and then we see how can we do the literature review. The last part is summarize and synthesize. Let's come to the definition of literature review. So as defined by Haller and Vell in 1996, literature is any forms of information that has already been published in a particular topic area. So, what about literature review? According to Creswell in 2014, a literature review is a written summary of journals, articles, books, or other documents that describe the past and current stage of information on the topic of your research study. A good review might also contain other information drawn from the conference paper, books, and government documents. So to conduct a literature review, you need to cite articles that are both qualitative or quantitative studies. Now let's come to the practice number 1. Can you read the text and can you identify the definition and the functions of literature review? So let's see the answer. I also add some extension. The function of literature review according to Creswell in 2014, there will be a lot of functions. First, it can help you to focus on what has been researched before on your chosen topic. So before you start doing the research, you need to know what other people already done. Next one, you need to document how your study fills the current research gaps. So for example, everybody research in the same topic, but you contribute something. Next, to provide evidence why your study is necessary. Also can help you to build your research skill of using the library or being an investigator who follow the lead in the literature. Also, you can also learn from the other educators when they write their research study. You also find a lot of useful examples and models, and you can base on when you write your research. Last one, it can help you to develop skill in locating the materials in a timely manner. Now let's move on to how we can do the literature review. First, we need to identify the key terms, and then we need to locate the literature. Also, look at these literature critically and you need to evaluate them. You also need to organize the literature and write a literature review. First, identify the key term. So when you begin your research, you need to search the literature so that you can narrow down your topic. You should choose these words carefully because they are very important to find the suitable literature. So you can actually write the working title. Working meaning unfinished title. You choose 2 or 3 keywords in the title that can capture the whole central ideas. And these working title can help you to think about the key ideas of your study. I give you an example of the working title. Undergraduate anxiety in writing English. So the keyword I need to look up in Google can be undergraduate anxiety and English writing. So when you do the identifying the key terms, remember to pose a short general research questions that you would like to answer. You can select 2 or 3 words in this question that best summarize your direction of your study. So we come back to the working title that I just gave you, undergraduate anxiety in writing English. The keyword, as I say, is undergraduate anxiety and English writing. You can think about some research questions such as, what is anxiety? What symptoms? Next one, what is the writing anxiety? In what occasions that the student suffer from writing anxiety? What is English writing? How many types of English writing are there? And what are the reasons behind writing anxiety suffered from the undergraduates? After you have some key terms, you need to start looking for the relevant literature. So there are 2 main sources of literature, primary and secondary. For primary source of literature, it consists of the literature reported by the individuals who actually conduct the research or who originally have the idea. For example, it is a research article published by the educational journals. So it can present the literature in the original state and present the viewpoint of the original authors. It can provide the details of original research, and it's also better than the secondary sources. However, sometimes you still need to find the secondary sources. So secondary source consists of the literature that summarize the primary sources. You see the difference between the definition. It does not represent the material published by the original research or the creators of the ideas. So some example of secondary source I can tell you is handbooks or encyclopedia, or select the journals that summarize the research. I think that secondary source literature will be very helpful for you if you want to begin to read the literature review. It can help you to have a kind of broad understanding of the topic rather than the primary source literature. So let's look at the figure. So the figure provides a useful classification system of the literature that you can consider. So when you use this framework, you might begin your research at the bottom of the triangle by consulting the summaries of research that synthesize numerous studies on the topic, which we call secondary source of information. From the broad summary, you can work your way up to the journal article, or we call primary source, and to early stage of literature found at the top. So for many beginning researcher, you can start with a summary. It's a good idea because summaries give you an overview of the topic. Summary can also have a longer life in an initial idea stage, and they have undergone a review for the quality. So as I say, secondary source of literature is actually not so bad for you to start. Here are some of the advantages and disadvantages of internet use as resources for literature review. You can have a look at it. So Let's see about the material. There are a lot of material out there for you to read. I already put it into order, in terms of order. First, article in reference, international journal. Second is book and chapter in edited book. Article in national or referenced journals, conference paper or research report, PhD dissertation and master thesis. And the last one is website article in non-reference journals. After you have all the material in your hand, you need to critically evaluate and select the best literature. You can answer the questions. There are two questions for you to think of. One, is it a good, accurate source? And number two, is it relevant to the topic? For the first questions, you need to think about the sources of the literature. Is it from the journal article published in national journals, or from the well-known journals, or from the government sources? So you need to make sure it is relevant by looking at the topic. The topic must relate to what you are researching right now. It must be problems and question relevant. Next one is step 4, organize the literature. There are two main things you need to do. First, reproducing, downloading, and filling. So you first can make a copy of the article, or you can download it from the website and then develop some system to easily retrieve the information. You can actually organize them by sources, topic, or keywords. After you download it, you can take note and look at the abstract of the study. I recommend you to take note of the information so that a summary of the literature is available for a written review. You can look at the questions being addressed, or look at the data collection, or look at the major result. So I highly recommend you to read the abstract. So here's the sample of the abstract. You can see that they break into different parts. First one is the reference. Second is the research problems. Next one is research questions, data collection procedure, and the findings. I also recommend you to construct a literature map, which I will show you later on. The literature map displays all the research literature that you want to use on the topic. And by putting them in a kind of very visual appearance, it can help you to see whether there is any overlap in terms of information on major topic. So let's see. So here's the literature map. You can see that we try our best to organize them into different fields, and from different fields, it actually points out in different subfield and subtopic. The last one is write a literature review. So the literature consists of the journal article or research report found in the literature resources. The researcher used procedure for summarizing each study, provide a clear reference to it, and write a literature review. So this one is the last step for the literature review. Now let's come to the two main skills that you need to do when you do the literature: summarize and synthesize. Actually, besides summary and synthesize, we actually need to do the critique and also compare. But because of the time limit, I can only focus on summary and synthesize. Okay, so for summarize table, I advise you to put everything you read into a table. You should include the author, the type of study, the sample, the design, the data collection approach, and the key finding. Let's see the table. So here's a table, summary table of literature, and the topic is atmosphere in service environment. So you can see that after reading five sources, we put into two main topics, colors and music. And under that, we divided into five things: citation, sample, environment, method, and conclusion. I think that you know what does it mean by summarize. How about synthesize? Synthesize means you combine all the sources into a coherent whole. So in your own words, synthesize the key findings relevant to the study. So there are four questions you can think of. First, what do we know about the immediate area? Second, what are the key arguments, key characteristics, key concepts or key figures? What are the existing debates or theories, and what common methodologies are used? So I will give you one example of synthesize. For synthesize, you can see that in here, each one is rooted from one literature. So first, you start with the topic sentence. Poor behavior in classroom can have a negative impact on the qualities of learning and teaching that take place. So this one we call the main idea. Moving on, we need to add some other opinion from the previous researcher. So Clark and Davis in 2007 demonstrate the relationship between the type of learning and student behavior. And these authors found that the behavioral issues were more evidenced around student-centered activities. And in here, synthesize is this sentence. This is supported by Wikind in 2009. So when you say the word, this is supported by someone, it means that you are trying to combine two sources. I will give you another example. You can see that the red one is what I highlight for the most important connection. So the main idea is most early theories of motivation were concerned with need satisfaction. So this one we call it the main idea. The green one is the sources that we read in the literature. And the word similarity show the connection between different sources, however, show the contradict ideas. And the last one, the red one, current thinkings do not discount these theories, but simply build on them to include the self-concept is the conclusion after you synthesizing all the work from others. So because synthesizing meaning you combine different sources and making links between study, I give you some language that you can show the agreements between study or disagreements between study. So you can see on the board, there are some words like similarity, some words like similarly, likewise, also, or again. For this agreement, we got however, on the other hand, conversely, or nevertheless. Next one, we come to referencing. Đồ chị thành 3.2 này. For referencing, we look at three things. First one, plagiarisms and how to avoid, quotation and paraphrase, and the last one, I introduce you how to cite, which is according to APA 7 reference rules. First one is plagiarism. So plagiarism means that you use other people's written words and ideas as if they are your own words. And all sources, when you do the research, must be acknowledged, including all the paraphrases of others people's work or of others people's ideas. So related ideas, self-plagiarism is when a research presents their own previous published work as a new scholarship. So it means that you rewrite your paper, also marked as self-plagiarism, so be careful. So to acknowledge other written work, you should use in-text, or we say within text citation, and another text reference. So let's see the difference between in-text citation and end-of-text reference. In-text citation means the references cited in a brief format within the body of the text to provide credit to the author. So you can see the example here. Rogers in 1994 compare the reaction blah blah, and also there's a lot of citation at the end of the sentence too. However, end of text reference is the reference list that put at the end of the research report. You can see in here, like there are two examples you can see. Now, let's see what does it mean by quotation and paraphrase. So quotation means that you cite the exact words from other people's written work without any changes. You should use a quotation mark to signal it. So you can see the example here. As Darwin in 1859 states, and with the quotation mark, and you actually quote the exact words from Darwin, and you also include the page number 510. However, for paraphrase or summary, according to APA 7 style, you don't need to use the quotation mark to cite. You can see the source text and the paraphrase part, and you can see that they actually change the language used. And I hope that you learn the writing 6 and you know what does it mean by paraphrase. You can also watch the video to have more information about in-text citation.
If you're watching this video, you're probably struggling one way or another with quoting. In this video, we'll learn how to quote together step by step, and by the end of this video, you'll be an expert. Yes, we can. Hold on, did I just quote someone?
Yes, we can.
Now, there are 3 basic principles of quoting. The quote itself has to be surrounded by quotation marks. Cite the author correctly, so make sure you include the author's name, the year, and if it's from a book or a journal, you need the exact page number as well. The quote also has to be identical to the original, so no changing it. But if you do end up changing it, there are a few points you need to be aware of, which I will explain later in the video. Of course, depending on your citation style, the citation contains different information. In this video, we'll be focusing on APA, but don't worry if you're using other styles. Just check the link in the description. We just talked about the 3 principles of quoting. Now we're diving deeper into how to quote in a bigger picture. So how do you actually introduce and format a quote? What's the difference between a short and a long block quote? And finally, how do you make changes to a quote? Let's begin with how to introduce a quote. There are 3 ways to introduce a quote. The first is with an introductory sentence. Consider this example. You can introduce the quote with a full sentence followed by a colon. You can also use introductory signal phrase. Now take a look at this example. You can use a signal phrase that mentions the author or source but doesn't form a full sentence. In this case, you follow the phrase with a comma instead of a colon. Of course, you can also use other dialogue verbs such as argues, claims, or explains. And if you want to quote a phrase that's not a full sentence, or if it flows well with your paragraph, you can also integrate it in your own sentence, as you can see from this example. Now that we know how to introduce a quote, let's tackle the differences between a short and a long block quote. If the quote you want to use is less than 40 words, remember the principles we mentioned earlier? Quotation marks and in-text citation? But if it's more than 40 words, instead of using quotation marks, you set the quote on a new line and indent it so that it forms a separate block of text. Now that we've learned the basics of quoting, let's get more advanced and take a look at how quotes can be changed. Let's say you found the perfect quote, but it's a bit too long and some of the information is irrelevant, so you want to take that out. We can do that by removing words, phrases, or sentences and replace them with ellipses. That's a ... You can also add information to a quote. If a quote is missing information that's essential for you to understand it, you can add it in square brackets. In this example, the quote uses a pronoun that refers to someone mentioned before, but without the previous sentence, the readers might not know who that is referred to. Then, you can replace the pronoun with the person's name in brackets. If you just so happen to come across a piece of text you want to quote, but it contains some errors, In this scenario, there are spelling and grammatical mistakes. You can notice the error by adding square bracket sick after the mistake. Of course, quotes are extremely useful and often a basic requirement when you're writing a paper. With this in mind, try not to go overboard with it and only use it in the following cases. Number 1, focusing on language. Let's say you're writing a paper about the novels of a modernist author. In this case, you probably have to quote frequently in order to analyze their language and style. Number 2, giving evidence. To convince the readers of your argument, interpretation, or your position on a topic, you should include quotes that support your point. Number 3, presenting an author's position or definition. You can quote to show that your point is supported by an authority on a topic or to critique a position that you disagree with. For example, you found a sentence that perfectly sums up a theory of your topic, so you quote the author before elaborating on your understanding of that theory. And that's it for this video on how to quote. Thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something useful. For more information on quoting, check out the article in the description box below. See you next time!
Now let's move on to APA 7th reference. So the APA stands for the American Psychological Association, and this one is the style manual, one of the most popular style in education research. I give you the link, and you can always refer to the link to site. So what should we put in the reference list? Reference list or trích dẫn ở cuối bài. We must include at the end of the text. Each source you cite in the text must appear in the reference list. Each entry of the reference list must be cited in your text. The list of reference in alphabet orders by the last name of the first author of each work, and you can only make one list of reference. Do not separate book, article, or website. You put it into only one list. Now, I will show you the rules for in-text citation first. For in-text citation, if there are only one or two authors, you can cite like this. The two first name and then the year. But it is a work by 3 or more authors, you can only list the first author names and followed by et al. In every citation, even the first one. So for example, you say Knist et al. 1993. If there's unknown author, you need to cite the source by its title in the signal phrase or use the first word or two in the parentheses. You can see that in the example here, a similar study was done of students learning to format the research paper using citation 2001. So using citation is the title of the book or the article. Now let's see the reference. So I will present you the article, the book, and the website, the most 3 popular reference you need to do. So the article in electronic journal you can find on Google. So you can see the rules here. Let's see the example to understand more. So you can see that the author starts first, followed by the years with the title of article, no capitalized, không viết hoa đầu chữ. Titles of journals in italic, in nghiêng. And then volume numbers, issues number, page, and DOI. For books, easier. For books, you can only just put the author names and also the year's application, the title of the book. You can also use the capital letter and also the publisher. For edited book, no author, you can actually start with the authors, or I say the editors, and then start with the years of publication, the title of the work, and publisher. Last one is the website. So for website, start with the last name of the author, the years and the month's date, with the title of the page, the site name, and also the URL, which is the link. For thesis or dissertation, a little bit complicated. Start with the author names, the publication years, the title of the thesis, the form of work. For example, is it a doctoral dissertation or master degree dissertation, and the institution, the school or the location. And the last part, you can actually give us the link. So that's all about the Unit 3. So in Unit 3, I help you to understand what does it mean by literature review. We look at the definition and the function of the literature, the organization of the literature review, and the summarize and synthesize. For referencing, we look at what does it mean by plagiarism and how to avoid it, how to write a quotation and paraphrase, and also APA, the 7th reference. Thank you so much for attending the Unit 3, and see you again in Unit 4.